The Colorado Buffaloes 2025 schedule is out now, with the Big 12 releasing its dates for this upcoming season. And what were your initial takeaways from that? 7 home games, first time in 43 years.
Yeah, which is crazy because when you look around the Power Four, like everybody does that all the time now, and so see you finally getting on board with that. They have 7 home games again in 27. So yeah, and so
2030.
yeah, so there's some. They're starting to come around to that, but like there's some teams that have had 8 home games. I mean, I know ASU had 8, I think, last year, and so Michigan seems like they play the whole month of September in Ann Arbor all the time, and so yeah, CU's finally coming around to that. So that was a big takeaway. I actually like that. We always knew that all 3 non-conference games were at home. I actually like that they're not 3 in a row, that they break it up with that trip to Houston, because I like that there's one of those road games early on, and you don't have back-to-back road games anytime this season. There's 2 buys in there again, which I didn't think there would be, because there's usually a lot of times it happens like once every few years. But the other thing,
I love that so much, Brian.
I think they're actually good timed buys for this team, and maybe we can get into that in a little bit. But like the other takeaway is that the 2 warm weather trips are early in the season, and the cold weather ones are late in the season. It's like, come on, man.
Not great for us.
No. So I mean, Morgantown and Manhattan in November. I would have liked those in September.
Yeah, they're going out to Houston early in the season, 3rd game. Which that was one of the things that kind of caught me off guard. I thought you'd have that Wyoming game before your first conference game. And you saw what happened to me down in Orlando last year. What's going to happen to me down in Houston in September?
Well, let's hope that's a night game. Prepare. I would just tell you to prepare for that. But yeah, I've never been to Houston, but you hear some nightmare stories about the humidity and things like that, and I don't know how it could be worse than what Orlando was, or Fort Worth in 23 was really warm, for that opener at TCU. So we've experienced that a little bit. I mean, we've experienced it going to Arizona over the years too, right? But Arizona's more of a dry heat than it seems like Houston would be. So I would just say prepare for that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's all good. I feel like I'm going to wear a tank top covering that game. Coach Prime has talked about he's going to coach in a tank top. That was one of his jokes going into last season. I might have to pull that off. And I don't know, Pat McAfee look in the press box there at Houston.
Yeah, you know what? A dinner is on me if you do that, and if you pull that off, that'd be awesome. So, I think it's going to be an interesting trip to go down there. Twice to Texas next year, which I think is great recruiting wise. Because obviously they recruit quite a bit down there. Hopefully the weather's not too bad down there, and but the trips are interesting. Obviously, we know we now know TCU a little bit because we've been there, but Utah we know quite well. But then Morgantown and Manhattan are 2 places we haven't been. I haven't been there. I don't know if you've been to. I don't know if you covered games at Manhattan.
1 game.
Okay, so and I've covered women's basketball in Manhattan, but I've never seen a football game there. So I'm looking forward to some places I've never been. I mean, like I said, I've never been to Houston. So 3 of the 5 will be stadiums I've never been to. So that'll be kind of cool.
Well, I'm going to hit the bicep machine at the gym so I can get ready for that tank top out there in Houston. The other thing that kind of stood out to me is that beyond having all those home games, having the bye weeks, when you look at the schedule, there have been a lot of schedules that have come through, and it looks daunting. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, Brian, this does not look daunting.
No, I don't think so. I mean, every schedule also has challenging games. You look at it and see, there's some challenging games there, but it does not look daunting to me. And, speaking of the buys, I mean, I love where they're placed. I mean, I think they said on the show on ESPN Plus today that they had the latest first buy of any team in the conference, but I actually like when it is. I mean, I think it's week 8, so I think they have 7 games before they have the buy, and I think it feels like you'll be able to get into a groove, And then around that time is when you have a lot of guys that are kind of hurting. And so you're going to have 2 buys in those last 5 weeks. And I think that's going to help this team, because typically, as we've seen, Coach Prime is usually under the numbers as far as scholarship numbers. And so, I'm sure with every team, but we notice it with CU, is that sometimes there's some depth things later in the year because you've had some injuries. And so having 2 buys late in the year, I think is a big deal. And one of them is before a road game. And so, I think that's a big deal to have 2 of them late in the season. But it's going to be a weird stretch, though, all the home games. But there's like an 8-week stretch where they're only home twice because you got a couple road games and a couple buys in there.
Yeah, and this is a schedule that I think you needed for a group that is getting acclimated. Mm-hmm. You're going to have more of the home fans behind you for the first 5 games at Folsom Field. I think that is important for a team that is kind of in the state that this program is, and there's a lot of talent in this program, but breaking in a new quarterback, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to here.
Well, yeah, and you compare the non-conference this year to last year. I mean, last year, you have one of the best teams in the FCS. I mean, the team that won the FCS title, right? North Dakota State, at Nebraska, at Colorado State. Well, this year you look at it and say Georgia Tech, that's a tough one, but you have Delaware and Wyoming here. This is a much more manageable schedule to your point, to a roster that is going to need some more time to get acclimated with itself, I think. And so I like this non-conference schedule. And Houston, you would think they'll be better, but I mean, Houston was one of the bottom teams in the Big 12, so it's that first game is not against one of the teams that's going to be favored. Let's just put it that way. I mean, it won't be against an ASU or a BYU or a Utah, something like that. So you maybe get to ease in a little bit to Big 12 play a little bit.
Yeah, and you also have this situation with the schedule where, to your point earlier, you don't have back-to-back road trips. Yeah. There are 2 opponents on Colorado's schedule this coming season in the conference play that are going to be coming off a bye week. But most of those other teams that are playing Colorado are going to be coming off a bye. So, again, I feel like this schedule is pretty well suited for Colorado.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to your point, I mean, it doesn't look daunting, and there's nobody out there, and there's no team I look at and say, man, they just can't beat that team. And there were a couple this last year that I kind of thought, I'm not sure if they can beat that team. Now, it didn't turn out that way, but they beat them. But I think this is a schedule you look at and say, yeah, I mean, there's some wins out there for this team, and I still look at. I know Utah was down this year, but I look at that trip to Utah as like, that's going to be a tough one. That trip to
in October, which is strange for Utah and CU, right?
Right, because it's usually the last game of the year, right? I think any trip to Manhattan is going to be tough, no matter what time of year it is. So, but I think you look at those 2; those are the 2 that jump out at me and say, ooh, those are going to be pretty tough. I mean, I think West Virginia is going to be tough too, just because it's a long way to travel. It's a tough place to get to, and they're usually a pretty solid team. So, I mean, I think the toughest ones are on the road, but then, I think Buff fans are going to be looking forward to, getting a crack at BYU here at Folsom after how the Alamo Bowl went. And so I think that rematch is going to be fun too.
You texted me after the schedule came out and said, I got my hotel for West Virginia game and for the Kansas State game. I'm like, Brian, he's been on this beat a long time too, so he knows what to do, and so I booked those as well. So I guess we're going to be staying pretty in close proximity for a couple of those trips.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about booking like Salt Lake or Houston, places like that. Like, there's plenty of hotels there, but they're literally like, I go through the Marriott site, and there was literally nothing available. It was all sold out in Morgantown. As of this morning, and so looked at it like, okay, I mean, all those football weekends are booked. So the hotel I'm staying at is like 50 minutes away, somewhere rural town in between Pittsburgh and Morgantown, and there wasn't a whole lot available in Manhattan either, and so there was a lot of things that came up to Topeka, like. Yeah. So, Buff fans, if you're watching this and you want to go to those games, you better get on this stuff quick because those hotels are going to fill up fast.
Wasn't like that in the Pac-12 days, but we're still getting acclimated to the Big 12 days, and their schedule is now out for the 2025 season.